The morning sun bled through the blinds, casting long, striped shadows across my kitchen floor. That's when I first saw the envelope, innocuous and white, resting quietly on my countertop. It bore the official emblem of the Homeowners Association, a looming presence in our little suburban enclave. I'd always thought of it as a friendly neighbor, waving from across the street, never intruding. But this envelope was different. An uninvited guest at an otherwise serene breakfast. I opened it with the caution one might reserve for a snake trapped in a box. The letter was brief, but pointed, like an arrow aimed at the heart. My driveway, the letter declared, was now considered a community road, a decision made, it seemed, without discussion or consent. The driveway that led to my home, my sanctuary, was to be shared. Karen was behind this. Of course, a fixture in our neighborhood, and the self-appointed enforcer of HOA edicts. Her presence was as constant and unwelcome as a pebble in one's shoe. She had been eyeing my driveway for some time, perhaps envisioning it as an extension of her fiefdom, her first petty action, claiming my slice of asphalt as her dominion, was merely a preview. I feared, but I remained calm. I always do. Emotions are like water. If unchecked, they carve valleys into your peace. I breathed deeply, inhaling the scent of freshly brewed coffee. An anchor in the storm. There are ways to handle this. I told myself, always ways. My mornings unfolded with a quiet regularity that I treasured. I would sit on my porch, the world waking up around me, the sky unfurling its colors. It was in these moments that I found clarity, where my thoughts aligned like the neat rows in my garden. I would not let this small paper dictatorship disrupt my serenity. I imagined Karen, bustling about in her pastel power suit, clipboard in hand, moving through life with the grace of a marching band. She was efficient. I'd give her that. But there was a brittleness to her efficiency, a lack of warmth, a winter wind with no promise of spring. Despite the intrusion, I chose to respond with quiet resilience. I would attend the next HOA meeting, speak my piece, and listen with patience. It was a peaceful strategy, perhaps naive, but I valued the calm before escalation. The meeting would be a stage, an arena where intentions would be laid bare like hands at a poker table. I prepared myself for a performance of persuasion. In the days that followed, I watched as the neighborhood went about its business, unaware or uninterested in the subtle war brewing over asphalt. Children played on the neatly trimmed lawns, their laughter a balm. Birds flitted between the branches. Unburdened by the politics of humanity, life went on, indifferent and beautiful. But beneath the calm surface, a plan began to form, a quiet rebellion, built not from anger, but from a deep sense of justice. I turned the idea over in my mind like a stone, smoothing its edges, feeling its weight, gravel and spinning spikes, a poetic response to bureaucratic overreach. But not yet. First, the meeting, the chance for diplomacy. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in hues of amber and violet, I sipped my tea and watched the first stars appear. Stars, like people, seemed so small until you considered their power. I smiled at the thought. Not all battles are won with noise. Some are won with the quiet strength of those who refuse to yield. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, I sat on my porch, sipping coffee that matched the dark, rich soil of the garden, a peaceful start, disrupted by the sudden screech of tires. The HOA had struck again, their latest newsletter. A barrage of complaints and demands fluttered in the breeze like unwanted confetti on my freshly mowed lawn. Community first, they touted, printed in bold across the top, a hollow mantra, like a preacher's promise before passing the collection plate. My driveway, now a proclaimed community road, bore the brunt of this motto. Vehicles rolled over it with the entitlement of kings. indifferent to the worn gravel that spoke of my past labors. Karen, with her coiffed hair and permanently pursed lips, was at the helm of this crusade, the self-appointed queen of the cul-de-sac. She wielded power with the precision of a surgeon, but the subtlety of a sledgehammer. I imagined her, penning these edicts with a smug satisfaction, as if each rule was a personal vendetta cloaked in the guise of community enhancement. The newsletter was more than a list of grievances. It was an anthology of absurdities. No garden gnomes, for they disrupted the aesthetic harmony. Vehicles must be parked no less than 3 feet from the curb, lest they mar the pristine streets, and my favorite, a ban on visible laundry lines, as if the sight of drying clothes could tarnish the neighborhood's virtue. Yet, it was the gossip that twisted the knife. Whispers, like relentless mosquitoes, buzzed through the air. Accusations and insinuations bred like weeds in the fertile soil of discontent. My supposed transgressions, exaggerated and twisted, spread from doorstep to doorstep. A modern scarlet letter, stitched invisibly across my chest. I spotted Karen's silhouette, framed in the window across the street, eyes trained on my every move. Her scrutiny was palpable, a tangible force pressing against my skin. I wondered if she was aware of the irony, her fixation on order-sowing chaos in the guise of control. The citations began to pile up, each one a stone added to the pile of grievances they expected me to carry. A lawn too long by half an inch, a trash can not brought in quickly enough, a driveway too gravelly for their liking. Each notice carried a thinly veiled threat of fines, sanctions, or worse, a hearing before the board. In the evenings, I often found myself walking along the street, my feet tracing the contours of this battleground. I pondered the triviality of it all, the pettiness wrapped in layers of formality, a circus, and we were all unwilling performers, our actions dictated by the ringmaster's whims. A thought occurred, an idea born from the very absurdity that surrounded me. If they wanted to treat my driveway as a community road, perhaps it was time to make it more dynamic. The spinning spikes, a defensive measure borrowed from wartime tales, seemed fitting, a deterrent cloaked in utilitarian guise, but also gravel, a return to nature's chaos, each stone a reminder of resilience against the encroaching tide of conformity. As I planned my next move, a quiet resolve settled within. Karen may have escalated, but she had also underestimated. The lady of the HOA had yet to see the lengths one could go to protect their own. I was ready, not for battle, but for the art of subtle rebellion. With the decision made, an unfamiliar peace settled within me. Like the quiet calm before the first snowfall, I had spent weeks immersed in research and planning, an architect of quiet rebellion. In the pale light of dawn, I would watch my neighborhood transform from a tapestry of tranquility to a theater of absurdity. With Karen at its center, her vision of control had wrapped our street in a suffocating embrace, but I was ready to prise it open. The afternoon was heavy with the scent of impending rain as I began, lifting the first shovelful of gravel. I let it fall onto my driveway with a satisfying clatter. Each stone became a small act of defiance, a layer of resistance against the HOA's overreach. The rhythmic sound echoed the steady beat of my heart, a symphony of rebellion in this suburban opera. The neighbors watched from half-drawn curtains and cracked windows. Their curiosity piqued, but their unease palpable. I imagined them as characters in a play, each waiting for their cue, their moments stitched into the fabric of this unfolding drama. Yet, no one ventured out, not yet. They were spectators of my silent protest, aware that a new act was beginning, but uncertain of its direction. The gravel driveway was merely the beginning, a subtle shift that laid the foundation for what was to come. It was a visible transformation, one that would stir whispers and perhaps a deeper introspection among my neighbors. Change often starts with a single stone in the pond, ripples expanding outward, touching every shore. I documented everything meticulously: the gravel delivery, The installation of the spinning spikes disguised as decorative elements. They were artful in their simplicity. Kinetic sculptures that revealed their menace only upon close inspection. An elegant deterrent. Almost poetic. In a file, I stored photos, timestamps, every scrap of correspondence from the HOA. Evidence, should it come to that. Karen's next move was predictable. A pawn advancing across a well-worn chessboard. Her letter arrived, replete with demands and threats of fines. The official stamp of the HOA like a black mark against the pristine paper. She was attempting to solidify her hold. To box me in with the weight of officialdom. I placed it carefully in the growing archive of our conflict, a testament to her obsession with control. It wasn't long before she stood at my door. Her presence like a storm cloud. Her eyes were shards of ice, searching for weakness, for some sign of capitulation. I met her gaze with the calm assurance of someone who had seen the storm's fury and chosen to dance in the rain. A quiet exchange took place, words unspoken yet understood. The driveway was no longer just a path to my home, but a boundary marked by resolve and clever defiance. I could almost hear the spinning spikes hum their approval, a mechanical chorus applauding this act of quiet rebellion. In that moment, I realized that the driveway was more than gravel and steel. It was the embodiment of my determination, not just to reclaim my own space, but to remind this community of its heart, buried beneath layers of control and compliance. My driveway was a road, not just through our neighborhood, but through the stifling barriers Karen had erected. The rain began to fall, a gentle percussion on the roof as Karen retreated, her resolve faltering in the face of silent resistance. I stood firm, the gravel crunched beneath my feet, each step a declaration. This was my home, my road, my stand against the tide. Sometimes, the most profound battles are fought not with loud declarations, but with quiet, unwavering determination, and in those battles, every stone, every document becomes a testament to the strength within. The dawn slipped in quietly, painting the sky in muted shades of gray and lavender. It was the kind of morning that whispered of change rather than shouted it. I stood at the edge of my newly appointed community road, the gravel crunching beneath my boots like brittle bones. The wind carried a chill that gnawed at my resolve, yet I found solace in its bite. Change was in the air, invisible but palpable, like static before a storm. Months had passed since the homeowners association, led by Karen's unwavering tyranny, had claimed my driveway as their own. Each day since had been a lesson in quiet resilience and strategic foresight. I had learned to navigate their petty bureaucracies with the precision of a chess player, each move calculated to undermine their arrogance. The first step was understanding the legal framework they operated within. It was an intricate web, spun from threads of bylaws and community standards. I delved into it with the fervor of an archaeologist uncovering ancient relics. Each discovery a small victory in my quest for justice. Kasmao, I found their Achilles' heel buried beneath layers of legal jargon and contradictory clauses, an easement overlooked in their zeal to expand. It was the key to reclaiming what was mine. I crafted my response with the precision of a sculptor, chipping away at their assumptions until only the truth remained. Every sentence was a carefully placed chisel, every paragraph a strategic hammer blow, and when the time was right, I set my work free, sending it into the heart of the HOA's fortress of paper and protocol. The days that followed were silent, a tense quiet that cloaked the neighborhood. Karen's usual bluster was absent, replaced by the uncomfortable rustling of leaves and the occasional cough of an engine starting. It was a silence that spoke of anticipation, of a game in motion. And then the letter arrived, official, neutral, its tone stiff with the weight of legalese. I read it under the sparse light of my kitchen, the words sparking in the half-light. My driveway was mine once more. The community road designation retracted, their claim nullified by a technicality they had so carelessly overlooked. I couldn't help but smile. A small, private moment of triumph. Outside, the world continued as it always had. Cars hummed along the gravel paths. Children played with the carefree abandon of youth, and the wind carried whispers of a neighborhood unchanged by its petty battles. Yet, I knew better. Beneath the surface, things had shifted. Karen's gaze, once filled with the fire of righteous indignation, now flickered with a reluctant respect. It was a small victory, but it was mine. And despite the quiet, there was a new tension in the air, a wariness that belied the HOA's facade of control. I turned back to my kitchen table, the letter resting there like a trophy, in the grand tapestry of life. It was but a single thread, but it was my thread, and I had woven it with determination and a quiet defiance that could not be claimed or repurposed by anyone else. The storm had settled, for now, yet, as I stood there, I understood that storms were not just forces of nature. They were forces of change, reminders that sometimes the most dramatic transformations began with a whisper rather than a roar, and I was ready for whatever the wind might bring next. The echo of tires crunching over gravel reverberated through the cool morning air, a symphony of defiance that resonated with my every step towards the kitchen window. The HOA's latest decree had been the last straw, claiming my driveway as a community road and asserting their dominance with bureaucratic arrogance. I had responded in kind, turning their presumption into a pit of spikes and stones. Now, as the sun crested the horizon, I watched as cars hesitated at the edge of my roughened driveway, a border they dared not cross. Karen, the self-appointed queen of the HOA, had insisted this was temporary, a transitional phase that would soon see the triumph of asphalt over autonomy. But today, her usual entourage was absent. There was only silence, pregnant with possibility. The morning unfolded in a series of small victories. Neighbors began to stir, their curiosity piqued by the absence of Karen's daily patrol. Windows opened, blinds twitched, and I could feel the awakening of something long dormant, perhaps hope, perhaps rebellion. It was subtle, like the first rays of dawn breaking through an oppressive night. As I sipped my coffee, I sensed a shift in the air. The neighborhood, once under Karen's iron grip, seemed to breathe for the first time. People emerged from their homes, drawn by an unspoken understanding that today was different. They moved with caution at first, testing the boundaries of their newfound freedom. I noticed Mrs. Lark, her flower-printed dress a splash of color against the gray of the street, pause at the end of her walkway. She lingered there, a solitary figure contemplating the world beyond her front yard. Her hesitation was brief. With newfound courage, she stepped onto the road, a pioneer in a land reclaimed. The wind carried a scent of change, mingling with the earthy aroma of freshly spread gravel. It was intoxicating. Slowly, others followed Mrs. Lark's lead, their collective presence coalescing into a gathering. They chatted in clusters, exchanging nods and whispers, their voices rising and falling like notes in a forgotten melody. I watched as they gathered, feeling the pull of community that had been missing for so long. My driveway, once a battleground, now served as a meeting place, a symbol of resistance. Karen's absence was a void that no one seemed eager to fill. Her reign, built on the fragile foundation of rules and fines, seemed to crumble in her absence. As the afternoon sun painted the street in warm hues, I noticed Mr. Adams, a retired school teacher, take a hesitant step towards me. His eyes, usually downcast, met mine with an intensity that spoke of gratitude and solidarity. He nodded, a simple gesture that conveyed more than words ever could. In that moment, I felt the weight of isolation lift, replaced by a sense of belonging. The day drifted into evening, and the neighborhood settled into a new rhythm. Conversations flourished, laughter echoed, and the oppressive silence that had once stifled us was replaced by a vibrant hum of connection. Karen eventually returned, her car skidding to a halt at the edge of the gravel. But the community had already shifted. Their allegiance no longer hers to command. She stepped out, anger etched into every line of her face. Her indignation was met with indifference. Her authority eroded by the simple act of unity. In the face of this newfound spirit, Karen's voice was but a whisper against the rising tide of change. She retreated, her defeat unspoken, but palpable. We had reclaimed not just a driveway, but a sense of community. The gravel and spinning spikes had served their purpose. But the true victory lay in the bonds forged amidst resistance. The night closed in, the streetlights casting a soft glow over the transformed neighborhood. As I stood on my porch, I allowed myself a moment of reflection. The journey had been tumultuous, but the outcome was undeniable. We were no longer divided by lines drawn in the sand. We were a community reborn, strong in our unity, resolute in our freedom.